It is my distinct honor to welcome you, not just on behalf of one of the hardest working teams in the form of the Chicago Urban League staff, but also one of the most supportive board of directors, Suzette McKinney, who is our president and the Chicago Urban League Board of Directors. Those of you who have been to the summit before know that this is the opportunity for us to each year lift up a policy issue that is of consequence and importance to the Black community. And while the issue may be of importance to the greater community, we often know that the issues have even a much greater impact in the Black community. Such is the case with environmental justice. And so over the course of the day today, we will talk about the issues that are paramount to Black folks as it relates to clean air, clean water, the opportunity to address those issues in a very tangible way, to not only be engaged in the workforce, but in the business opportunities, and what it means to live and work sustainably in our community. We'll acknowledge that this has not always been our space, but there have been some pioneers who we are excited to lift up today, and we have finally caught up with them to say not only is it our space, but it is a matter of civil right to ensure environmental justice in our community. With that, about 3 or 4 months ago, we were honored to host Governor J.B. Pritzker and Mayor Lori Lightfoot at the Chicago Urban League office as they announced a solar program, and as we were able to show off our solar installation. Even though the mayor couldn't join us today, she sent remarks, and we'd like you to hear them at this time. We are going to continue, and we will hear from the mayor. We are extremely excited today because we are going to start the morning off with a panel of folks who are not only experts, but also passionate about the work that they do. You know, so often we have partners and members of the Chicago Urban League family who are superstars in their own right. Such is the case with Nakia Crossley. Nakia is an attorney and energy policy leader who currently serves as Director of Government Affairs for ADT Solar. In this role, she leads government policy nationwide to remove market barriers to energizing more homes with solar power. She has previously held positions at Sunrun, the Solar Energy Industries Association, and the Illinois Commerce Commission. She's received numerous awards for her leadership and legal and energy regulatory expertise. Some of those awards include being acknowledged as a top 40 under 40 by Crane Chicago Business, a top 40 under 40 emerging leader by Energy News Network, and a top 100 under 50 executive leader by Diversity MBA magazine. And we are especially pleased to count her as an Impact Leadership alumni, as she was a 2020 fellow. She is going to lead a panel that includes significant leaders in this industry and friends of the Chicago Urban League. I won't steal her thunder in introducing them, but I will express from the podium my gratitude to Regional Administrator Deborah Shore from the EPA, as well as Shalea Morissette, the Deputy Director of the Department of Energy. And so please join me in welcoming Nakia to the podium. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay, so let's cultivate some energy in the room, no pun intended. Good morning.
Good morning.
I hope you're as excited as I am to be here today. I've asked my panelists to just follow me up because we're going to jump right into the discussion. Wow. You read your bio, but it's a totally different thing to hear somebody read it. Karen Freeman Wilson, thank you so much for that kind introduction. Thank you to my dearest Mavis Lang, wherever you are, as well. Somebody say right here, hi. As well as the entire Chicago Urban League Board of Directors and staff for affording me this opportunity and also for being so accommodating leading up to the preparations for today. As I said, I'm really excited that the Chicago Urban League has created a forum for us, in particular for this community, to talk about this issue and to be further educated on the issue. It is a topic that people often consider to be quite niche, but it literally touches every single person in this room. Every person that you know, every person that you walk by on the street. These are essential resources that quite often, as we were kind of discussing in the back, people take for granted. But our community, particularly Black and Brown communities, tend to be most significantly affected by the decisions that are made as it pertains to energy in the environment. So, as Karen said, I'm here with Administrator Deborah Shore, of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and Chief Shalea Morissette of the U.S. Department of Energy. Both of these agencies are obviously, as you can kind of get the hint from the name, are critical to funding and developing research, as well as developing and implementing policies and regulations, and enforcing those as well, concerning these essential resources. And so it is my hope that as we delve into the backgrounds of our panelists and some of their insights and experiences, we'll all come away with a better understanding of how each of us can play a role in advancing equity in the clean energy and environment sectors. Just one housekeeping note before we jump in, and I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves. If you take a look at your name tag, there's a QR code in the corner towards the bottom. If you take your phone and open up your camera app and hover over that QR code, you should see a link, highlight, and you can actually send me questions. And this handy-dandy fancy thing that was handed to me, I'll be able to see your question and ask them to the panelists. So keep those questions in mind and fire away. So, I think what we'll do is we'll just take a moment, we'll start with Administrator Shore, to let you just introduce yourself, give us your title, tell us kind of your day-to-day responsibilities, and give us some more insight into what your agency does and how it connects to the audience.
Well, thank you, Nakia, and good morning, everyone. I'm Deborah Shore. A shout out to my former colleagues at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. It's good to see some of you again. I'm the regional administrator for Region 5 of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. The Region 5 is 6 states. It's Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, and 35 tribal nations. And it's the largest of the 10 regions that EPA has divided our nation into. We have just over 1,000 employees, but we are hiring. Go to usajobs.com in all kinds of jobs, because the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Law have more than doubled the region's budget and increased the agency's budget tenfold, and I'll tell you more about that. But I was appointed by President Biden to this post about a year and a half ago. It's a presidential appointment but doesn't require Senate confirmation. And prior to that, I served for nearly 15 years as an elected member of the Board of Commissioners of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. That's the very large wastewater and stormwater utility, serving not only the city of Chicago, but 129 other municipalities in Cook County. It has $1 billion budget and a key role to play in our freshwater ecosystem, namely through stormwater management and wastewater treatment. And of course, water and energy are so vitally linked because it takes a lot of energy to treat water, pump water, move water, and yet water is also a source of energy. Many people don't know that the Water Reclamation District generates hydropower at the Lockport Powerhouse, where there's a 35-foot difference between the Sanitary and Ship Canal and the Des Plaines River, and that goes back more than 100 years to generate electricity from turbines there. But EPA was founded just over 50 years ago with a mission to protect public health and the environment, because there had been an emerging consciousness in our nation that we were polluting our rivers and streams and air and soil. And finally, a dramatic fire on the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland in 1969 captured the public's attention and in dramatic fashion, and led to the establishment by President Nixon of the Environmental Protection Agency, and led to the passage of several aspirational pieces of legislation, like the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act, and so on. And since then, the agency's been working throughout the country to try to endeavor to clean up our contaminated soils, our polluted air, and our streams and rivers. And we're doing a good job, but there's a lot of work left to do, and I'll talk more about that.
I feel like I just got a whole history lesson that I don't know. I've learned so much, thank you. So I'm fairly new to Department of Energy. I've been with the department since August of 2022. And so if you're thinking about what does Chief of Minority Business and Workforce Division mean, it means that I do a lot of one-on-one consultations. My goal is to increase the participation of minorities in all funding opportunities for the department. So it means that I travel a lot. It means that as soon as I step off the stage, I have to get to Houston to talk to more people. So you said about a year and a half, right? You were appointed. And so I can do basic math. That means that we have about 14 months to make significant change in advancement for minorities. And so for the next 14 months, I will continue to travel and be away from my family to make sure that you all get the information that I'll share with you today. Internally, we joke that EPA and Department of Energy got B's instead of M's. I mean, we got billions, and other agencies got millions. So most of what I'm doing is talking about how do you actually get those dollars? Because what you see on the news is largely, we call him Brother Joe. Brother Joe is releasing billions of dollars, right? That's what you see, and it doesn't feel attainable. And so what I do is I go in and I see where are those actual dollars? Well, what does that mean for businesses? And how do you actually apply? And what are the barriers? And so many times I'm looking at this saying, I can't change government. I can't change the past, but I have learned to hack the system. I've figured out things that we will not change and what we need to do to get over those barriers. So that is what I'm here to do with you all today. No.
Well said, well said. And don't be afraid to clap. I hear it. Like I said, we're cultivating the energy for your day. Shalea, we will touch on how you get to those dollars. But first, I want to back up and just get your insights into, it's been, 7, 8 months? So what are some of the most biggest or prevalent issues that show up in terms of inequity, particularly racial or economic issues?
So the list is long, unfortunately. One of the things that I hear all the time is, I don't know. Government has this idea that if we put it on a website, you all will just go to the website and figure it out. Well, this is not really how people work, even though we have everything at our fingertips, on our phones, and in our homes. We don't even know where to begin to look. And so the number one thing that I hear from everyone, regardless of race, is that I don't know where to start. It feels overwhelming. It takes so long. And I try to let people understand that if you take the time and you work, it's worth every penny. We're the largest employer, we have the most money. It's worth your time to engage with us. Now, when we start to get into the sciencey stuff, people get really nervous. They say, I don't understand nuclear fission or fusion. I don't understand how you all do what you do. I have to have 1 million degrees to even be considered. That's true. Right? I need you to understand some math, right? I need you, if nothing else, to understand how to look at your books and know that you're doing the proper accounting for us. Because we will not change. This is a reality. For anybody in this room that believes you are going to change government overnight, never going to happen. You may long term, and everything that we're doing is not for us. It is for my daughter's daughter. It is a very long game. So shifting the mindset is one of the largest barriers that I have to deal with, is that for everything that you're trying to do, you want it to be done quickly. There's a reason why there's so much paperwork. It feels like red tape, but I promise you the red tape is there for a reason. And once you figure out it's actually there to protect your money, you can then appreciate it. Because it's my tax dollars that we decide to say, Here's another $27 billion to go towards CDFIs and green banks to make investments through EPA. Those are my tax dollars for the last 30 years that I've been working. So when you look at that, I have to convince people to, one, say reading is fundamental, math is fundamental. These are basic things. You will have to read a lot to engage with us. And what I tell business owners that are running operations is if you're not a strong leader, get somebody to read for you. Use technology. Do whatever you need to do in the next 14 months to engage with us. Because it's going to move quickly. It's moved faster than I can even tell you in this moment. The other part to this is everybody thinks that we just do nuclear. Yes, half of our budget is based on nuclear weapons and research. But there's a large portion that's dedicated to outreach, doing what I'm doing. There's a large portion in teaching people about energy. There's a large portion that's energy efficiency, that's doing upgrades to our schools. There are billions of dollars here, but if you don't know where to look, if you're not talking to me, if you're not willing to read, I don't know if you'll find them. PhDs. For those of you that, how many, by show of hands, anybody have a PhD here?
Nice.
Okay. I need you all to know them if you want to do business with us. I don't care if you have a working agreement with them on paper. I need it to be undeniable when you apply that you have a subject matter expert that has a PhD. It's very easy to say that you don't have the education. When I look at black and brown folks, we look at our numbers. Black women, yes, we're getting more and more degrees. We're not necessarily increasing our PhDs. We need to. Education will get you rolled out of an application with us. That is the reality of the situation. If you want to play with nuclear weapons and you tell me that you have a bachelor's degree in business, I'm going to look at you and say that you're crazy. It doesn't make sense. So these are the barriers that I'm trying to get people to understand, is that you don't need the PhD, but you need to know someone that has one, that will say, yes, I have reviewed it, and I'm willing to put on paper that this makes sense. And then we can trust you. Make it make sense. The last thing I'll say is the mindset of black and brown folks for a long time has been crab in a barrel. It has been, I would rather go with nothing than to have a little bit of something. You will be left behind if you do not engage. You are stronger together. You are 100 years behind some of the most popularized, most wealthy engineering firms in the country. You're 100 years behind. You have to work together. You will get so much further if you are willing to say, I have a partner, not just by saying association. I need it on paper. I need a contractual agreement that when you come to the table, you can say, I have partners in the industry. It's really important for you to understand that. If at any time I see that a business I'm working with is having internal quarrels about ego issues, I'm shutting it down. I cannot afford for you to fail. For every time I push you to apply, I need you to be tight. You don't have room to fail. You don't. You have to work together.
This is a reality check, folks. Well, I heard you say a lot of things. I don't want the people in the room to think that because you don't have a PhD that you're cut out here, because not a lot of people raise their hands, and we all believe, what I think I heard you say is ultimately, there's opportunity for everyone. And so education, resources, finding the resources, getting the access, I think is one major barrier that I heard you speak about. And I think the goal of this summit today is to try to reduce that, right? To give everybody that education and that access. Administrator Shore, do you see some of the same issues show up from your agency, and are there any ways that inequity shows up that maybe we don't think about?
I love what Shalay was sharing and telling you all federal agencies are up against this obstacle of people not having the portal or necessarily knowing how to get access to those enormous resources that are now being made available from the infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act. Happily, EPA and many other agencies are trying to address it in a number of ways to stand up a variety of assistance centers to provide that training, that oversight, that guidance in how to write a grant, how to manage a program, how to make sure that your reporting is done well. And I'm so happy to report, and you'll be hearing from her later today, that Naomi Davis and her organization, Blacks in Green, were just named one of about 10 Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers for EPA. She's going to be getting, we're investing $10 million over the next 5 years to build the capacity of Blacks in Green to help those of you in the community and organizations that haven't had that access in the past. That's just one initiative. There are 2 such of these technical assistance centers in Region 5. The other is the University of Minnesota, but they will work with any organizations in Region 5. Another thing that's underway, if you ask Administrator Regan at the EPA, what are the top priorities for EPA in the Biden-Harris administration? It's environmental justice and climate change. And $27 billion, which Shalaya mentioned, is going through EPA for climate pollution reduction grants. The portal to access that $27 billion is through large metropolitan areas. In Chicago, the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus is going to be the vehicle to write a planning grant that will open that door to $27 billion, and the state of Illinois will also be participating. So that's another way to get access to funds, and there is a mandate to work with community organizations, tribal nations, and those that haven't been working with the government in the past. We established a lead service line replacement accelerator in Wisconsin that's specifically working with smaller municipalities. And there are environmental finance centers that can help municipalities access the billions that are there for water and wastewater infrastructure and for monitoring for emerging contaminants of concern like PFAS. So there's a lot of resources. $5 billion for electric school buses. Of that, in the first year alone, 148 million went to Illinois school districts. And each year, many of those were prioritized for areas that were had more exposure in terms of air pollution. So the reduction of diesel buses, replacement by electric buses is going to make a tangible difference in the lives, not only of students, but of teachers and communities.
Can I brag some more?
Absolutely, please.
Listen, you got a whole lot of money over there. So when we talk about dollars, how many of you know what a P-TECH center is? P-TECH, do you know what that is? Really fun, because several patents has worked with DOE. You don't count in this conversation. So you need to know what these centers are because they're all over the country and they're technical assistance centers. How many of you know what MBDA is, Minority Business Development Agency? Wow. So 2-3 people. It is the only federal agency dedicated to minorities. They just did $100 million for credit readiness, and it's all technical assistance. It's available for you. You walk in as a business, as an entrepreneur, and you say, I need help. I need help with grant writing, I need an attorney, I need resources. That's what they're there for. Small business development agencies, do you know what those are? One person. Another resource, technical assistance. You need to be talking to them. They will help you write everything. They have federal dollars from us to assist you. I bet everybody knows what SBA is, right?
Yes.
Yeah. They have great marketing. We got to do better. So for our group, I recently gave out $6.3 million to a group called BOSS, Black Owners of Solar Services. And what we did with them, we said, look, we need an ecosystem because I need to really just prove the federal government wrong. I said, I need an eco center where I can go to and pull a business out and say, apply for this because you qualify. So this group will provide all of the technical assistance. They will identify where are the prime contracts that you should be applying for as a sub. They'll also identify, hey, these are contracts coming up that you need to be aware of and get you to apply as a prime if you're ready. They'll also go through, they'll make sure that you're MBE certified, right? You want to identify as a minority-owned company. Those are the simplest things to do, but it takes a lot of work. If you have an idea, SBIR. Most agencies have an SBIR. It's a Small Business Innovation Research Grant. It's about $5.3 billion every year over year that's invested. It's the only fund that is non-dilutable, meaning that we can't take your idea. So if you have a solution for one of the issues, like solar panels, did you all know that every second of every day a solar panel is put into a landfill? Every second. They're degrading, and we know it. And so we've asked the public that if you know how to reuse them, not aesthetically, I don't need a table built out of solar panels. I need to reuse it, right? If you have a way in which to do that, we will fund your research to figure it out. It can be just an idea right now, and we will fund it. We'll give you $250,000 to start you off. You come back in a year, tell us where you are. We will take you to the next level by giving you $1.6 million. Over the course of 6 years, you can get up to $5 million. We don't want any of the money back. We may not be your customer. I'll give you an example. Dr. Lonnie Johnson. Anybody know who he is? Yes, one person. He invented the super soaker, the Nerf gun. He got his money through the SBIR program. It's been around for ages. You know what their numbers were? They awarded last year less than 2% to minorities, and that included women. We're not applying. Whether it's because we know it or not is an issue, right?
Okay.
We have, just for schools, the thing that you're going to see a lot coming out of us are these things called prizes. Prizes are our way of recognizing that it's difficult to apply for our funding opportunities. Right now, there's a $15 million prize. If you are willing to basically do any sort of clean energy projects in rural areas, rural is defined by 10,000 people or less, that's it, nothing else. We don't care about poverty level, just rural. I need a 2-minute video, I need a slide deck, and some basic financials. That's your application, and it's considered a prize. So that's out of one of all of the funding that we got, the $390 billion that we got, OSED, so Office of Clean Energy Demonstration. So go in the bathroom now, do your 2-minute video, and apply, right? But you'll see more of that have large numbers. The prize dollars that come out of that range from 100,000 to 300,000, and you get it in phases. So if you do really well in your outreach, you got people signing on to do anything from EV charging stations to just general energy efficiency in these rural areas. We'll give you money for that. They have $1 billion dedicated to just rural areas, and there's so much more coming out of these offices. Little brag.
Lots to brag about. So the energy industry is notorious for having a lot of just abbreviations. And so I hope that you all have been taking copious notes. I promise it's Googleable. Just put OBM energy. You'll find it. But we're gonna move on. It sounds like both of your agencies have access to a lot of dollars. And your pockets are hot. You can't wait to get them out. And I heard Administrator Short talk a little bit about how it trickles into the states. But for me, as an Illinoisan, that's where things tend to get a little bit tricky. We talk a lot about access. What are your thoughts, and do you, where does the buck stop? How do you, after you after you put those dollars into the state, what happens?
You want to tackle that one? I can do it with the netting plan. How many of you are aware of the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Bill? Okay. So for those of you that don't know, every state submitted a NEVI plan. Basically, how are they going to implement all these charging stations for these electric vehicles? They've all been approved. We said yes. So I believe the state gets $28 million just this year. It will likely be shared through your Department of Transportation office and your state energy office. And they have to figure out how to manage it. They also have to figure out whether to give it out as a grant, or as a cooperative agreement, or as a straight contract. If you're not in that circle, I don't know how you'll know about it. But those are the circles that you have to be tapped into. You need to know what your state agencies are doing with your money, right? For NEVI, what we're suggesting is that every time I go somewhere, I meet with those offices and I say, what are you doing? How are you spending it? If you tell me that you don't have someone that's installing it, I'm going to show you 10 that are willing to do that work, that happen to be minorities. So those are the agencies that really handle our money. There are others that will take over when it has to do with schools or work with the Department of Education. It just depends on the type of dollars that we're pushing out and what it's for. That's on our end.
Yeah, I would say it is hard to know where to start. I think I would be, as an organization, asking, what is it you want to do? What's your goal? And narrow that. And not only is government a source of jobs and support, but many companies now are coming to us because they're hearing about Justice 40, the administration's mandate that 40% of the benefits, not necessarily the funds, but 40% of the benefits of federal funding must flow to overburdened and underserved communities. And that can happen in many ways. And companies, not all, but some, want to be better neighbors and more engaged with the communities in which they're located and where their employees live and work. But they come to us and say, just tell me what to do, as if it's a box to check. And it's not. And I would say to them, listen, go out and listen to people, and listen actively and authentically, because the solutions to problems often lie within those communities. And so that's first and foremost. And I'm hoping to stand up a number of corporations in each of the Region 5 states that are doing it well as exemplars to other companies, because often the best messenger is a peer. So it's going to be company to company.
You just hit on a question that I wanted to ask. A lot of people here are representing corporations, but there are also some who are small businesses, minority-owned businesses. I'd love to hear how each of your agencies are working with those entities to encourage the advancement of equity in these spaces.
So I do this every day. This is my bread and butter. So if you have questions, I am accessible. My work cell phone's right there. I will give you my phone number, I promise. If you need me, I'm here. I have a team of 10 people. Every third Wednesday of the month, I host an Ask Us Anything series where we are available to answer all of your questions. I have experts, everything from tribal law to the SBIR program that we talked about, to folks that have worked for the patent office before. I have folks that just have 13 years of procurement experience. If you ever want to talk to a contracting officer, I have her. She's on my team. But I will sit down with you and we'll walk through what the process looks like for you, what you have to offer, and we'll try to identify opportunities that you should be engaging with. So I understand that you need to figure out what you do as a business. You need to be clear about that, right? When you come see me, be ready, because I'm going to ask you, what do you do and what do you need? And then we'll try to fill that for you. So for the agency, within every office, there's usually a small business officer that will talk to you. They don't get a chance to come out as much as I do, but they know within their group where the dollars are and how to engage with it. So that's the best resource internally that I could give you outside of myself.
And I was going to say, EPA and I think most federal agencies have goals for small business contracting, and we have small business contracting officers, and they're there to answer questions and try to not only meet but surpass those goals.
We forgot about OSDBU. We forgot about OSDBU, the Office of Small Business Development, Disadvantaged Business Office. So most federal organizations have this OSDBU office. I know, it's alphabet soup, forgive me in advance, I'm relearning my alphabet with the federal government. But there's an office dedicated to small businesses, regardless of race, that wants you to get engaged with the contracting piece of what we do. And I know that you all go through some sessions, but there's sort of lanes that you need to be aware of when you engage with the federal government. So you have contracts, meaning you're providing a service for us. Right? You have a cooperative agreement, you are working with us to do something, usually in community, it's a benefit for the public, and you have grants and research and development. And there's some other quirky sort of things that I've learned about that I didn't know existed. But the grants are money that we don't want back. We do have some cost sharing that most folks don't understand. When you come in for a grant, you might have to pay 40% or show up and say, I've got a building that's worth that. But my lovely friend Nicole Morton will tell you all about it in her session too, of how that stuff works.
So I'm really excited to see that we have a few questions from the audience, but if you have one and you want to get it in, I think we have time for a few more. So again, hover over that QR code on your name tag and I will receive the question. You talked about grants, and there's a question here that I think is relevant. What happens with the money if no one applies?
We put it somewhere else. We'll put it out again. Right, so we'll revamp, we'll put out another notice to say we need more information, right, we didn't get it right. Doesn't mean we like spend it, I don't take an extra vacation or anything with it, but we will put it back into the pool, we'll reallocate those funds, we'll try to figure out what went wrong. Usually it's a prompt for people to come and talk to me, right, they'll say, Shalia, we put it out, we didn't get anybody, can you help us with your network? And then we say, sure, we'll help you, we know where the people are.
But are each of these entities that you named, and there were a lot, do they have strategies for outreach to ensure that the people that that their target audience is reached? How can
Is anybody recording?
Yes.
So I have to, look, it's people behind government, okay? And not everybody is perfect in the realm of their strategy for outreach. Someone's idea may be, we're gonna put it on the website, we're gonna use our social media. If you have no followers, make it make sense, right? And then there are others that are very robust, they'll come to me and they'll say, Shalia, we want you on the world tour with us, we wanna make sure that we're reaching people, and I will say to them, most of the time, you're probably doing it wrong. So I've gotten very creative with my outreach. If you tell me that you want to reach low-income people, I've suggested that you go in and you talk to the employer. Tell the employer to give you an hour of their employees' time and educate them about clean energy or whatever it is you're trying to talk to them about. Because if you try to knock on my mother's door after 5 o'clock, she's not giving you any of her time. She's too tired because she's been working all day. She has kids to feed, dinner to make. She has worries that you can't solve by knocking on her door. She's annoyed because you don't go to a black person's house without calling first, okay? So you didn't call, you didn't announce yourself, you don't just show up. So I've gotten very creative. For them, it's considered creative. For me, it's sort of duh. But no, there's not necessarily a really in-depth strategy for every department. There's also some exclusivity. There's certain things where you need certain certifications to do the kind of nuclear work that we have. And a lot of times you can't get the certification unless you have a contract, and you can't get the contract unless you have a certification. I know how crazy that sounds. And so I'm trying to do things about that to say, how can we make this that you're a sub to a contractor that's been doing this a long time, and then you get your certifications, and you learn from them, and you're able to engage with us to say, at least give me a shot. Boy, you're talking about my office alone was started in 1978. Department of Energy was started in 1977. So we still have work to do. So it's not a perfect system with outreach. Are you doing any better over there?
Now, we're learning too. In some programs, Superfund, for instance, in contaminated communities, EPA has had community involvement coordinators from the beginning, and they work in those communities and provide information and get to know the neighbors and community leaders. But we now recognize we need that for a lot of our programs. And we're hiring in environmental justice realm, but I'm traveling. I meet with representatives from environmental justice and social justice organizations throughout the great the states in Region 5, and all of my counterparts are doing the same.
This might be a question for you. Is there a way to get involved in the municipality scene or impact water infrastructure as a civilian in the private sector?
Well, there are trade organizations you could probably join. There's the Illinois Water Environment Association, and if you want to get involved with your own municipality, go meet with your city council or the mayor or the public works director.
I have a couple of questions in here about restating acronyms. Please Google, I know there are a lot. Here's one. How do you actively engage individuals who are EEPs and EECs? And I know that's another group of acronyms. Equity eligible persons or contractors is what that stands for, to pursue careers in solar or renewable energy.
For me, it depends on what part of the country I'm in. I gotta be honest, like, solar is so saturated in certain parts of the country that I tell people, do you have a piece of innovation, right? Like, what exactly are you doing? Are you an installer? Because the larger issue for solar, you don't have enough electricians. So I can tell you the Northeast, where I'm from, where I still live, the average age is 55, white and male for electricians, which means they are retiring. We can't get enough electricians. So my way of influencing those organizations that can do the work is asking them, are they willing to do a mentor program? Are they willing to recruit? Are they willing to teach? Electricians take one-on-one teaching, right? That's the ratio they have to have, which is difficult. That means that you need a licensed electrician to stop what he's doing and teach somebody else. It's also a 5-year program. So you have to have the resources at home to be able to become an electrician. You have to have the full support of your family, likely, to be able to do it. So when I ask those companies that are considered eligible for those programs, I'm asking them to take some of their resources and put it into people. I will tell anybody, do not chase contracts, chase relationships. If you have a relationship with me or any other agency, chase the relationship. You'll get the contract. If you're doing good work, you're doing good work. I don't necessarily push for one industry over the other. If you're in the Northeast, I'm probably going to say you should be ready for offshore wind. It's coming. If you're in Texas, solar's there, right? If you are in energy justice communities and there happens to be a landfill, I'm going to push you to do something on that landfill for solar because it's wasted space. I'm also going to say, what are you doing with geothermal? There's wasted natural gas that's just flowing out of the ground. How are you being innovative? There are things to do in those spaces.
To your point, and just taking a step back in a way, the IRA has provided a lot of money, a lot of different programs have come out of it. It's just starting to come into effect with guidance coming out, it seems like every week or every other day from different agencies. Ideally, do you think that the issues that we've been discussing will be addressed given the passage of this act? And if not, like, where are the opportunities?
Well, I think Shalaya mentioned some. I see opportunities. If I were to say, where are there going to be guaranteed jobs? I would say, get trained as a wastewater or water treatment plant operator. There is a silver tsunami in that sector, and one of the reasons so many systems are in trouble is they can't get certified operators, and some of those are entry level with a high school diploma. I would become trained to install and maintain EV charging infrastructure. There's going to need a lot of installation and maintenance across the country there. Things like that. But I think people want and deserve clean water to drink. Our water infrastructure is aging, so the replacement of lead service lines is a decades-long endeavor. And those pipes are going to be made locally and installed locally. So that's an injection into communities where those lead service lines are being replaced.
Are some of those monies being directed towards training programs? To your knowledge? Or the support of recruitment?
I don't know about the lead service line program, but we have both through our brownfields and Superfund some workforce development training programs to train folks to design and install and maintain green infrastructure, to restore habitat and wetlands that are part of cleaning up these legacy areas of concern around the Great Lakes. So a variety of things like that.
Yeah, there's tons of money. So we know anytime we do something new as government that we have to invest and get private sector to push forward. So we will invest in the workforce. There's a notice of intent, an NOI, right? We are asking people to tell us what jobs will be available, right? Title, actually, we're asking you, what title is going to be available in solar manufacturing? Because we're investing so heavily. We currently do not produce solar panels in this country. We have awarded a couple of $1 billion to be able to do it here. But now we need to know, how do we influence that industry? What jobs are going to be available and how much should they be being paid? And then likely we're going to go to higher ed institutions and say, hey, you need to build this curriculum. Right now, there is also an RFP. What's that one stand for? Request for a proposal. Right? There's some of them that you know, right? So this RFP is going to come out. I think it's already out, so I won't get in trouble. So it's out to say, all you need is a partner that's in industry, a manufacturer, and you are the higher education institution. And all we're asking you to do is to actually deliver manufacturing curriculum that has jobs at the end of it. So we know it's happening. That's through one of the offices that the IRA was able to stand up. That's through MESC, Manufacturing Energy Supply Chain Office. MESC is what we call it. So they've got a bunch of dollars set aside just for that. So they're asking higher ed to invest in people, but we'll pay for it, right? But they need an industry partner. We need it to make sense.
And I would also say, just look into your local state agencies. There are a lot of new laws that have been passed that, particularly in Illinois, where training programs have been developed. I want to give our panelists an opportunity to, in closing remarks, just address the audience. Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you'd like this audience to know as they head into their breakout sessions for the rest of the day?
Well, I do want to commend the Urban League and Karen for not having bottled water, but boxed water. Props to you for that. It's a propitious time in our agencies, I think Shalaya would agree, and in the country. These investments that Congress has sent to us are game changers. More money devoted to water infrastructure and clean energy and climate change work than ever before. I can't think of a more worthy way to spend my time and effort at this juncture, because climate change is not only the issue of our time, it's the issue of all time. And we need to work with as much urgency as we can muster. So that's where we'll be.
I would say ask questions. You all are going to go into these sessions. You have these people and your time, and it's limited. I don't care how stupid you may feel saying, I should probably know the answer to this. Ask the question. Be the person. Get the information out of the people that you have in front of you today. Ask. I kid you not, they will tell you. They'll be so excited to talk to you. The fact that you're interested, the fact that you're here is a big deal. You all are supporting an agency just by showing up. People don't believe me when I tell them there are hundreds of people that care about the planet. They think that this is just a once-over thing. The other thing that I would ask you to be is an ambassador. We have a problem, and we know it. Energy and water is not sexy. I mean, we're sexy, right? But it is not appealing. We are we're losing great minds to other fields. They're going to other agencies and they're doing other things, and we actually need them here. So I would ask you to be an ambassador to young people and get them interested. It's really important. Get into a classroom. Get into a classroom. Do not go dressed the way that you're dressed today. Buy a pair of Jordans, do what you gotta do, get in a class and meet them where they are, and bring them with you. Show them what you actually do. The last thing I'll say is, utilities are the gatekeeper to the average person. We all pay an electric bill, we all pay a water bill. If you are interested, go work for a utility company to see what happens. Oh my gosh, I don't even know what that table is. But seriously, that is how I've learned so much about how the system works, and we will rely on them to give us access to the grid. It's really important that you understand the systems in place and share it with other people. I sincerely appreciate you all showing up, for sitting in traffic to get here. Thank you. Let's give our benefits of the If this doesn't get you excited for the day, I don't know what will. I see tons of questions, and I apologize that I wasn't able to get to them, but I promise if you go to your breakout sessions following this plenary, you'll get the responses that you need. This is, the lineup today is just extraordinary, so please take advantage of this opportunity. You won't regret it. Thank you so much again to the Chicago Urban League for the opportunity, and I'll turn it over to you, Carmen.
Yes, and join me in thanking here